In the 130 years of this wonderful club, few weeks have the potential to define a legacy and to lay the foundations for future generations. On this week's show, we remember a famous night in Rijeka and ask if Joey O'Brien's men are ready to write their names into the Shelbourne history books. And one man who was there to witness it all, our very own Donny McEagon, back from Rijeka. Donny, welcome back. Firstly, how was Rijeka? And more importantly, how are you?
more importantly, we won. But yes, I am. I'm good. The body is weak, but the heart and the spirit remain strong. 4 planes and a bus ride later, we're all good. We're all back. And I think the last of the stragglers come back tomorrow. I know Dowdy is in Zagreb, I believe, coming back tomorrow. But yeah, look, just feel really blessed to have been at such an historic event, a spectacle, a second half, and just really grateful that it all worked out. The trip was fine. There was no major issues with cancellations or delays or anything like that. The weather was wonderful, and the result was even more wonderful. So I couldn't be happier.
I was looking out for you in the cage. Couldn't see you there, but an incredible atmosphere. We spoke last week, Donny, about what would have been a good result. Would it have been a draw? Would it maybe even have taken a 1-0 defeat just to keep the tie alive? Few, even the bookies didn't fancy Shells. I saw some prices 14-1. That would have been perfect. That's sort of music to the ears of people like Joey O'Brien, but being there in person, what was the performance like?
Well, certainly I'd agree that I think all the talk before in Harrott's Irish Bar, Harat apostrophe S, possibly the least sounding Irish word I've ever heard for a chain of Irish bars. But we were all gathered there before the game. And yeah, that's absolutely what the talk was that, look, this is obviously a very outside chance that we'd get any kind of positive result, and we were sort of between ourselves absolutely happy to couch the fact that a 1-0 deficit wouldn't be a terrible outcome, and bringing them to Tolka Park with no fans in the away end, and only a 1-goal margin of deficit would have been acceptable. So anything beyond that was seen prior to the match as sort of blue sky, scenarios. So the 14-1 thing, I can vouch for as well, because when I got back to the hotel around midnight, I was looking through my phone and looking at some of the content that people have been posting and so on, and in the WhatsApp groups and all of that stuff. And I saw that the bass player in my band, shout out to Shane, who wouldn't be he's played in Tolka Park in the bar, but he wouldn't be the biggest football fan, had put a sneaky fiver on Shells to win at 14-1, and no man more shocked than me to see the winning docket in our band chat. So I believe as well, some people got it as wide as 20-1 prior to kickoff, and I have it on pretty good authority as well that 100-1 was being offered after Rijeka took the lead for Shells to win on the night. So we certainly weren't given much of a chance. And looking at our history and Irish teams' histories more broadly in Europe, you could see why. But after that first half performance, I suppose we went in at half time. Look, we hadn't really made much of a dent in their rear guard. We weren't much of an attacking entity in the first half whatsoever, but we were extremely pleased in the cage with what we saw directly in front of us as we defended that goal. That we thought, well, look, more of that. It won't be easy. There was a lot of pressure, but there were no real clear-cut opportunities. And I think whatever some Croatians might have said following the game, that we only had, a couple of shots on target and they just happened to go in versus, the sort of the amount that they had. Taking out the mistake that led to their goal, they weren't cutting us open at any point during the night. We defended extremely well. They were very flat in front of us, and we just worked so hard to keep them out. So that first half certainly gave the 150 fans or so that were in the cage hope that we could get something out of the game.
Shells looked relatively comfortable, Tony, when you consider that all the UEFA markers show that the Croatian league is far ahead of us in every sense. We said last week, Rijeka were the champions ahead of sort of the so-called bigger names of Hajduk and Dinamo Zagreb, but like ourselves, they'd won the league on merit. The first half of the game, did Chelsea settle in well? Did it take a little while? You know, when we saw the first leg in Tolka against Karabag, we seemed to be a little bit nervy, seemed to sit off a wee bit. Have we learned from that?
Well, I mean, you'd like to think so, and you could maybe point to it and say that it appeared that way. I wonder how much of it is hashtag learnings, and how much of it is the fact that Rijeka are certainly a very good outfit, but they aren't on that level that Karabag are at. That's the one thing I was sort of keeping an eye out for immediately. I found even obviously being at the Karabag game in Tolka Park, and then just witnessing the first 45 seconds or so on the TV for the second leg in Baku, that it was immediate to me in both games. Just the speed that they were operating at was, at a different in a different stratosphere to what we're normally used to. So I was kind of hoping that wasn't the case when we saw Rijeka open the game. And look, they're technical, and their passing was good, and their shape was solid, and they moved the ball well. But there was nothing in that opening sort of salvo that I thought, oh no, we're in for a chasing here again. This is like Karabag Mark II. I think the pace of the game, it was intense, but it wasn't something completely out of this world that we wouldn't have seen before. So that gave me some hope. And I thought there were times I actually kept in my head, I was thinking about what you'd said, Andy, previously when you were doing your counting on the abacus there of the accurate passes, or the consecutive passes that we had. I think it was 6 that you'd said was the most we managed against Karabakh, but I wasn't counting on the night. But there were passages, even in that first half, which we were under siege for quite some time, you could say, where when Harry Wood started to drop into pockets in the middle, and when we started moving the ball laterally across the pitch, we actually managed, I think, to put a couple of heartening spells together as well, to be like, okay, well, look, we weren't working their goalkeeper, and we didn't create any chances in that half, but there was enough to show me that, okay, we could pass it around and make them have to, sit in and sort of take their medicine, possession wise, at least for a while. So, and then in the second half, that we upped it a notch again. And again, there were stretches of the match where they found it hard to get the ball from us. And, that you can't say that too often when you're going away and playing the League and Cup champions of Croatia on their patch, to have those moments where we did own the ball and we looked after it appropriately. Showed us that, okay, we shouldn't fear this team. They're very good, but we can be very good as well. And so it proved.
Sean Boyd departed early doors again. It's hard to say what's going on there, Donny. Do you think that could be Boydie out for a few weeks? John Martin came on, and obviously we know what John did, but Boydie, is that an issue that just won't go away for injury wise?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And look, we've talked at length, Andy, at this stage now about there being no sentiment in the game, and injury certainly is one of those factors where there's just no rhyme or reason to it, and it can be cruel. And obviously, Sean Boyd came to us trying to rehabilitate his career, having been on the receiving end of some pretty catastrophic injuries while on the books at Shamrock Rovers. And Apart from his first season with us, where I think he played 32 out of 36 games, he's been struggling to hit 50% appearances in every season since. Sometimes quite a bit below that. That's, I remember we used to bemoan that he would get suspended a lot. Unfortunately, he's played so little that suspensions haven't even really factored into the games he's been missing in the last year or more. So it looked like a hamstring injury to me, Andy. I haven't heard anything from the club insofar as an update since. But as I said, a sliding doors moment. Perhaps if that doesn't happen, John Martin doesn't come on and have, arguably the game of his life. I thought he was tremendous in both boxes. Maybe the game plan was that John Martin was going to be, rested until the 75th or the 80th minute, or who knows what, if Boyd was able to endure. He wasn't, so it gave the opportunity for John Martin to write himself into the history books, and he took that opportunity with both hands.
A lot of questions in. Just on that one in particular from Eno Dowd. Would you agree that Martin is our most informed striker? I think he's earned his way into the team. Well, I think you've answered that one there, Dunny. He's up against Meepo, who seems to do a lot of running. John Martin, I would say, probably had the night of his life the other night. Let's talk about this the second half, Dunny, when things really got going. I thought, again, my man, Vessel Spiel, was top class. I thought he was brilliant, but there's no getting away from a touch you see out in Fairview Park on a Sunday morning. For Vessel, to be fair to him, I think Sam Bone before him had another touch that you see up in St. Anne's Park. Back pass, but really Vessel, look, it's one of those things. I don't know if it took a tiny bobble. Touch was too heavy. Stonewall penalty, but up to that point, Vessel had made a couple of good saves, and again in the second half. But let's talk about the reaction, Dunny. I think it was less than 2 minutes, straight up the other end, and something that we've seen and mentioned. We've mentioned this for a long time now about our set pieces. So I think we're starting to see real results from work being done on the training pitch. What a response! What a great goal!
Yeah, well, we are. I mean, it's unusual. If you think about it in the round, that we're still waiting on a goal like this from a set piece in the league, and then we go to 2 away matches in Europe, and Dave McAllister orchestrates 2 fantastic set pieces that culminated in what should have been 2 completely valid goals. Both similar but different. A similar start with the corner getting a bounce back from the first man, and to create another angle for the ultimate cross into the box. The one in Linfield was delivered across the ground towards the penalty spot as the runner was coming from the back post at a sort of a diagonal angle, whereas this was stood up for the smallest man on the pitch to come absolutely steaming in like a wrecking ball at the back post with his unbelievable leap. He had no business doing that, and frankly, and if anyone follows me on Twitter, they might have seen, just again in all the travels that we were doing the following day, we were all just looking at the content, a million times over and watching the goals a million times each. And some people were sort of freeze framing it and saying, well, at what point does the ball cross the line? I think there's a very strong argument that it's James Norris's goal. But sure, who cares really? But it was definitely going in. And we did have a conversation about, Jesus, what would have happened if Sam Bone had hit it off the underside of the bar, or if he had been offside or whatever. But a lovely, simple, again, as I'd said about the goal in Linfield that was chalked off, that it wasn't reinventing the wheel, but you can have things like this where you could have multiple. Start with, if they want to keep with the sort of bounce back pass from the first man, then there's several avenues you can go down then, and yeah, maybe they were expecting that cut back to the penalty spot that we'd done in Linfield if they'd done their homework, and we stood it up to the back stick instead. So look, it was fantastic to obviously to hit back so quick. It's fantastic to score any goal away from home in Europe. Obviously, we're talking about two games in a tie, so it'll count at the end of the day. It gave people behind the goal hope. It was into our end. Small things, it doesn't matter, I guess, if you're watching at home, but we were trying to wrestle some sort of control back, not just on the pitch, but like in the stadium. They were very loud. Their ultras didn't stop for most of the game, but we tried to sort of poke holes in that as well when we could. When our dander was up, they were celebrating sort of Freedom Day, Croatia Day, or whatever was the previous day. So they'd had displays inside the ground of hundreds and hundreds of Croatian flags. They did a giant tifo midway through the match as well, probably at a point of significance that I'm ignorant to, presumably around the Serbian war that was wrought on them and Bosnia, like in the early 90s. So it was a hostile atmosphere for sure, and being able to hit back so quickly really allowed us to, I think our confidence as a unit really came through after that we didn't sort of mentally accept defeat or accept that we couldn't get back into the game, and obviously scoring so quickly after they had allowed us to sort of reset and push on again.
The second goal, Donny, John Martin, just before he finished that lovely header, created another great chance where he spun just inside his own half and fired an absolute cracker, which just outside the post, but the warning signs were there. But that second goal from Shells, you won't see a better goal than that this year. I don't care what anyone says. Paddy Barrett was beautiful. Paddy Barrett again, to me, is just getting better. He's so influential and important to the team. Again, we were both in Sligo last Saturday in nasty weather, and Paddy Barrett just marshalled that game like the Trojan man he is.
He's a real leader, and that's
incredible.
Not just on the ball. Obviously, he's very he's very skillful, and he has a lot of physical attributes that help when it comes to big moments and whatnot, and he has a lot of experience which helps in that too. But just the cajoling and the revving up and the focusing of players around him, and the best defenders I think are always like that, those who sort of marshal, talk, constantly give information, constantly make sure that you're switched on, even if the ball is not in your area, that you're sort of have your head on a swivel, that you're thinking about what could happen. I think good defenders have to sort of read things before they happen. They give themselves the best chance of getting out of a bad situation or not letting a bad situation occur. And I think his way of communicating really helps the team. And yeah, he mightn't have gotten the headlines from the other night, but his influence over the team certainly was noticeable.
Right, I think it was the 91st minute as well. He threw his body in front of a shot that was definitely going troubling Spiel, and another incredible block by Barrett. Back to the goal, Donny. Barrett to Mbeng, who again, it was only his second game for Shells, to Wood, and then an unbelievable ball. It does my head in that professional footballers can't. You see it every week. They cannot beat the first man with a cross. You look at the results when you're putting in those balls into the box. Say John Martin thought it was Christmas Day. What a ball! Great finish right in front of you as well, Donny. What was the feeling? What was the emotion?
It literally was right in front of me as well, which is mad. I ended up moving around the cage a bit during the match. I kind of started right at the back, over to the right hand side, right where it looked, watching it back, the real sort of feral celebrations where I had moved from that area by the time we scored the goals. But when John Martin connected with that header, I could see I was stood basically where their goalkeeper was, just to the left of the penalty spot, and I was like, he is in a large area here where if the ball was able to find him, I could see Harry get that ball from Mbeng, and I was like, okay, well, if he manages to cross here, you got a centre half on one side of John Martin and one behind him, but the gap in between looked too big, and so it proved that if the ball was just right, and it had to be obviously just right, that they didn't have time to adjust, to backpedal and get something on it, or get touch tight to him. The ball was too perfect. I thought it was interesting actually. The defender is kind of completely done in by the ball when you see it's coming in at head height, but because the defender's been done in positionally, he throws his leg up. So when you see one of the angles, particularly from the sort of corner of the goal, John Martin goes with his head, the defender has his foot up that high. That's the defender's code for I'm absolutely goosed here, because they want to be attacking that with their head. You know what I mean? So if you're throwing your leg up like a bicycle kick trying to get a block, something has gone drastically wrong. It was bedlam. Like, I agree with you about the crossing. We often don't make the most of and it's not just us. It is a more general thing in football, but it wasn't like it was from a dead ball. Like, Harry had a lot to do. Mbeng found him in that pocket quite nicely. He sort of gave the man in front of him the eyes, and then slipped it out wide with the outside of his right foot, which gave Harry time to look up. And you can believe that he saw John Martin there, because there was nobody else to hit in the box. It reminded me actually of Cam Ledridge's ball for Meepo in Tallaght. That kind of where you got the man is between two players, and you have to beat the first, but land it in the zone in the middle. But there was a defender close to Harry there. Like, the angle of where Harry whipped that ball, the defender would probably be upset that he didn't get a block on it, because he was close enough, I think, to get a foot to it. But Harry sort of raised the ball high enough to go above the defender's shin guard, I think. And look, the trajectory was literally millimetre perfect. John Martin didn't have to get off the ground. He might have done a little half jump just to get the power on to direct it. But like, it was so picture perfect standing behind the goal. Like, I could have taken that football in my hands and walked to the corner of the goal, and I couldn't have put it in a better place. Like, he literally put it in an unsavable place. So to score a lead goal, look, there was enough time left in the game. We didn't know how it was going to finish, but to now know that, like, in the tie we've got two, minimum. So even if, look, we were to collapse and we lost 3-2, you've got something really significant there. You've got an amazing moment. You've got this very, even in our somewhat fuzzy state at this hour of the evening, it was an hour later over there, and it had been a long day. You could tell that this was the thing of, objective beauty, footballing wise, the move. The fact that they didn't lay a glove on us, I love that as well. And when a ball is knocked around from one side to the other, different types of passes, and then a sort of traditional headed finish like that, and no one has managed to lay a hand, a tackle, a touch on the ball, just perfect. So the place, as you've probably seen the videos, our own friend Adzi waiting like a banshee. I always said and it wasn't just him. This is the thing. Like, I think when the goal is extra special, either bit like just the quality of the goal or extra significant, most men have this extra octave range in their voice to go from like it's not a guttural manly yes, it goes to this high pitch, the soprano, or is it alto level, where you don't normally hit those notes unless something really really special has happened. So It was just so a lot of hugging, a lot of bare chests. If you're a fan of men of a certain age, topless, this cage was the place for you. It was quite a sight on a muggy Wednesday evening. But yeah, I mean, this is why you go. These are the moments. Like that's what I was saying to people afterwards. These are the moments. Like this is something you'll literally never forget. And what made it more memorable, obviously, was holding on for the win. What will make it more memorable still? I brought quite a bit of memorabilia, newspapers, the ticket. They were serving drinks in cups, sort of emblazoned with their Ultras logo and stuff on them. That if you didn't, some people traded them back in. I kept mine, and I hope that if we do the business now next week and get through to a group stage for the first time ever, that all of these mementos will, including the memory of the goal, will have an extra significance, not just from that night, but for what it meant for us as a club going forward.
Yeah, some great footage. A good friend of the show, Adam Leonard, seems to be the man on the spot these days when there's clips going around.
The hat choice was something
Mm.
I saw him on the night, but I think I saw him without the hat. But yes, in the clip, the Stetson or whatever you call it, that was an
Gareth
interesting
Brooks.
choice. Yeah,
I'm not sure what was going on there, but we'll let him away with it. We've had so many comments in, Donny. I'll fire a few at you. Some we may have covered already. Not to be bringing the tone down, but we are only sort of halfway there. First question here from Brian Murphy: what do Shells need to do now in order to see the job through? And then second question here from Andy Owens: will the small pitch and will the small Tolka Park pitch play a part in the second game?
it certainly could. There was a few people telling me that they felt that Rijeka Stadium, which by all accounts is not where they wish to stay long term. It's sort of more of a holdover, but that their pitch felt small. I didn't really get that myself. I'd be shocked if it's not bigger dimension wise than Tolka. I'd be shocked if Tolka isn't one of the smaller pitches in Europe for this competition. But I think it could do. It depends on how you think we're going to approach the game. I mean, a smaller pitch, instinctually, you'd say, well, that means closing people down should be easier. Pressing the opposition should be easier in whichever direction, because there's less room. Literally, there's less space out there between the players. The one thing I would say, obviously, we've played several games now on it with the narrowed dimensions, so it's a known quantity. Rijeka don't have that luxury. You could argue it's one of those intangibles, like not having any of their fans there. But are we setting up shop to just stop them? I mean, I don't think we will. I don't think we should. I think Joey sort of showed his hand a little, but he wasn't playing games in the media. He said we were going to go and have a cut off them, and that's what we did. A lot of managers would say that maybe, and then when they get in 0-all at halftime and they haven't managed to have a shot on goal, they just say, "Look, we're halfway there in this game. Just keep doing the same thing, boot it out of play, waste time, be a bit cynical, game management, and try and get out with the 0." But we didn't do that, and I touched on it about the first half. There were prolonged periods in that second half where we dominated the ball. They didn't have a man. They weren't a man light or anything like that. Like, we were able to keep the ball away from them at their place in front of their baying fans, who'd just seen them lift 2 trophies last year and who think that we're part-time waiters and mechanics, and we're knocking the ball around, making them run and chase. So I think we'll probably approach Tuesday's game with a similar mindset that, look, when we don't have it, we can afford to press them in certain areas with aggression and use what we know about Tolka to our advantage. make them feel uncomfortable. For all that I just said there about it being a stadium that they don't seem to have a huge amount of love for, um, it it's far more plush than what they're going to experience when they come down the Richmond Road. I think they might be in for a shock. So I think again these are all drops in the bucket that could ultimately fall in our favor. But I think we have to attack them as well. I think we have to put them under pressure and make them worry about us, because 90 minutes is an awful long time. Playing for a draw in football is never something that you can be too comfortable with. Aim for the stars, and if you land in the clouds, so like if you play to win, and if you end up with the draw is good enough, great. So I'd expect that from Joey. They have their number one fella, Mr. Fruck, I believe, is back from suspension.
Yep.
The other guy, the sort of more the sort of tricky, the guy I liken to Jadakiki.
Gabriel Rukavina is still out.
He's still suspended.
Yeah.
But Senor Fruck is back in, and apparently he's their number 10. He's the go-to man. So we might have to, what I said earlier about feeling that they were quite flat in front of us and that we saw a lot. Now we still had to work our asses off. Don't mistake me, but they were quite predictable in how they just hit plan A over and over and over again, and we were able to deal with it. This guy sounds like he could be a guy who knows how to break lines, a guy who knows how to bring others into play in a way that they seemed unable to do in the home game. So I hope that whether it's Paddy or whomever can marshal him sufficiently, or as a team, or we managed to come up with a plan. It won't be for lack of trying, I'm sure, but the pitch, I'm sure we will use it to our advantage as much as we can, but it's not gonna defend for us, it's not gonna score for us. So I think we have to be as adventurous as we were in Rijeka, at least, if we want to come away with the result that we need.
We had a question in there from Brian Curran, who on that very topic of Mr. Fruck, Senior Fruck. Brian says, with the return of the Rijeka star player, the aforementioned Mr. Fruck, Tony Fruck, will they be a different animal? And what can Joey do to avoid any ounce of complacency?
Well, I think Joey's gone on the record saying that he thinks that they're still favourites to progress. I don't know him personally, of course, but he doesn't strike me as a man who goes through life feeling complacent about very much, or wouldn't bring much complacency into his workplace. I think he's been very open, but very sort of stoic about the job at hand. With any game that we've played under Joey. So, could Tony Fruck make a difference? He certainly could. But yeah, I mean, ultimately they have a lot of pressure as well. The manager, amazingly, despite having won the double, there was someone started the rumor actually on the night while we were being held back after the game in the cage that he was being sacked live on air, and some of our lads ran over while he was being interviewed in a very dubious pair of chinos and slip-on shoes, which I mean, holy moly!
Must have got them down to Michael Guineas, did he?
I mean, it's a hell of a statement for a European, for patrolling the sideline on a European night. But anyway, he's people are talking about him getting the sack. Now, he didn't get the sack obviously on the night, but having just won the double, his European record is poor, and his and their European record in recent years away from home is particularly poor. This is why they are on the receiving end of the travel ban for fans, because of that 5-0 thumping that they took in Ljubljana, where they went ballistic um, and got their suspension from their behaviour. So they have a terrible away record, so much so that a lot of the locals were basically conceding the tie when talking to our guys after the match. So he's going to feel pressure, and obviously, like any game, when you have a slight advantage going into it, the longer that you can make them struggle, if they come hot out the gate and they've got to go within the first 15 minutes, then you're back to square one, and their confidence is going to grow. And if it's if Fruck is on the score sheet within the first 10-20 minutes, as I say, we might start wobbling. But if we get 25-35 minutes into the match, it's 0-0, and they're sort of huffing and puffing, but not really able to get in behind us. And if Spiel hasn't been tested too much, then they could run out of ideas again. They ran out of ideas at their place, with the chicken run over on the riverside screaming at them. And hopefully, one of the things, I agree with everything you said earlier, Andy, about Vessel Spiel. It was very evident to me that this is a young man who understands hashtag game management, because this phantom shoulder injury, bless him, has been flaring up at just the right time, from a Shell's perspective, just to take the fizz out of things when necessary. And I think his behavior, the way he carries himself, the calmness to which he sort of addresses situations in a volatile match, and matches to this point, has been really refreshing to see, as well as some of the other attributes that you've touched on yourself. So calming things down and having that attitude sort of permeate through the team, we could definitely do it. But it could be a completely different match. This team, to me, Andy, I don't know if you agree, and I'd like to actually hear how it came across on the television, because obviously that's where most people would have had to watch it. But there's a sort of a professionalism and like sort of starting with Spiel and emanating out, where whether it's Mbeng, as you say, who's come in now and looked the real deal straight away, the fact that we didn't capitulate after conceding, and even the performance away in Azerbaijan, I thought was very professional. Like we're kind of looking a bit more cohesive and like a professional unit. And that doesn't mean that we can't make errors. Of course, every team will make errors, but I feel that we are improving, and that we're starting to look like a team that is difficult to beat.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And there's a couple of things there. I think the fact that we've, touch wood, we've hopefully had our major injury issues out of the way, which no doubt has affected our league form this year. We've sort of paid a price after a fairly sticky patch. I've expressed my concerns for 6 months or so around the goalkeeping situation. Many people slapped me on the wrist for how dare you even question it. But look, we are where we are. I think Spiel is the man now. I think he has a great sense of calm about him, presence. He had, I think the guy who scored for Rijeka was Jankovic. I think, can't remember his name now. He had a bit of a running battle with Vessel all evening. He was firing them in from all angles, and the infamous dodgy shoulder came in right after one of those particular shots. Mbeng got a huge amount of stick down in Cork, but look, Cork is a bit of a madhouse at the best of times. But again, we saw him in Sligo the other night. First game, he thought he played well. Came off after an hourish. But we're assembling a very solid squad now. Now, as you said, Donny, we conceded a poor goal. That can really not affect your morale, but it can take you. Sometimes you say, "I'll give it 5-10 minutes, just build yourself back into the game." Immediately, there was no feeling sorry for ourselves. We got straight up back at them, and we got one or two tricks in our locker. As you said, set pieces. They're not reinventing the wheel, but they're hugely effective. And then you have other players like Harry Wood, who's after finding an extra pep in his step. John Martin has really sort of come out of his shell a wee bit. He set up the goal for Boyd and Sligo. Like this, McEnroy just continues to play 8, 9 out of 10 week after week, really good. And the aforementioned Paddy Barrett, just to name a few.
I'd
But
throw Ali Coote in there as well, Andy.
yeah, Ali's done really well.
I know he
But
didn't feature the other night, but
yeah,
he he's contributing with goals. Obviously, his goal in Sligo was exceptional. He's got the goal against Linfield that's allowed us to have
yeah, he's done
this
really well.
march. So yeah, he was kind of out of favour under Duff for whatever reason. And again, I think it sort of isn't. It doesn't it feel a bit more like sort of square pegs and square holes, and a little bit more,
Yeah, it does.
Evan Caffrey might feel a bit hard done by. I thought it was interesting actually that he was
Yeah.
doing a lot of the pre-match press and then didn't feature at all. But Mbang is a player who's played the position that he's now playing for us,
If you look
most
at
of his career.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas
it's true.
Caffrey was doing very well at times, but having to sort of manipulate or change his own game up to accommodate this system. It kind of feels like we're maybe finally getting the right players in the right places, and upping maybe the quality level all round because of that.
Yeah. We bounced back to make it like when we went to 1-1, Donny. If you had have offered me 1-1 then after an hour, I would have said, yeah, wrap it up. Let's get the hell out of here. But the lads, they weren't happy with that. That says a lot. And another night we could have right at the death. There was a handball claim. I'll actually say the referee, my friend Mister De Burgos from Spain, I thought was excellent. I thought he took no nonsense, and I really enjoyed his performance. But
You're the second person who's said that to me. Yeah,
yeah, he was
I
really
think
good.
on the night, I know myself and friend of the show John Murnock were feeling that we were a bit put upon, that there seemed to be a lot of sort of nudges in the back that weren't being given. And Bang went over quite a few times expecting a free and got a throw at best. And I was thinking, geez, he's letting a lot go here physically, sort of stuff that, at least one of every three at home would be given for just a nudge, or, yes, maybe the player exaggerated, but you see them given, falling into that very broad category of you've seen them given. But I think at the remove of seeing things in from the TV angle and having replays and whatnot, I think that's probably the case, that he had a very good game, and ultimately the big ticket issues probably were more in the second half. The penalty was a penalty. Now our equalising goal, it's coincidental, or maybe not, that it's bringing me back to the one in Linfield, because I think there was more physical contact and blocking, for want of a better term, happening on that set piece than there was in Windsor Park. The one in Windsor Park gets chalked off. This didn't. The keeper ended up on the ground. There's an argument that we were being held or blocked, or but sometimes it's rare that the attacking team get a massive benefit of the doubt in cases like that. If there's an
It is.
attacker
Yep.
wrestling with a defender and the goalkeeper ends up on his back, you've seen them so many times that's an easy just a hand pointing out and saying, no, there was too much contact there. So we were done right by him there. And at the very, very end, and again, consider where we were, almost at eye level at pitch behind the goal. We were a long way away from the handball incident in the last minute of injury time. And then when the referee sort of called Mark Coyle, and a very, very tall Rijeka player whose name I don't know, over, I just said out loud, I have no idea what's going on here. I think Rob Gaffney was standing beside me. I have no idea what's going on here. But it probably wasn't good. It was bringing me back shades of Gibraltar last year, where I thought when the referee completely lost control, and like we ended up getting Sean Gannon was sent off, and we didn't know why. And I was like, geez, this game could be abandoned. That was a total farce. But I was thinking, well, obviously the fans are baying for blood. They think they've been aggrieved somehow. The players are surrounding the referee, and to have the huevos, the cojones, the minerals to stand there and whatever info he got in his ear and say, yeah, and then not even allow them to kick to restart the game to go,
Yeah,
that's it. Sorry,
he
lads.
was off. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah. The long and short of it is we did come out on the right side of the big decisions.
yeah. Well, again, gracias, referee de Burgos. I'll be keeping an eye out for him. We got lots of messages in again, as I said, Donny. John Brennan, Club SLO. What a special night in Rijeka. It's fantastic to see how connected we are as a club, from the owners, staff, fans, and everyone in between. We're we are in an amazing position both on and off the pitch. Thank you, John Brennan, friend of the show. Donny, we mentioned our buddy, the Rijeka manager, Radomir Dalovic, I believe, in his fancy white pants. You did touch on this, but I just wanted to go into it a wee bit more detail. How was the result received locally? Will they be slated over this? Is this a humiliation by mechanics and barmen or whatever we were called? He
Yeah,
is under severe pressure now.
it appears so. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder actually, if we're talking about his sartorial choices there as well, I wonder, it reminds me of the story about when was it Dermot Keeley who flooded the away dugout when it was it Roddy Collins or Pat Dolan was coming out in the 3-piece suit or whatever, and he made sure that it was nice and muddy. I dare say his loafers wouldn't be able to to handle that on Tuesday, but it's been seen as a national disgrace.
Good, good.
Sporting wise, when we were waiting for our bus to take us to the airport at Pula, the following morning I went to buy a newspaper to see if it was covered on the back pages in any great detail. Surprised that it kind of wasn't, to be honest. Like it wasn't covered as in depth as I would have liked. When we were in Gibraltar last year, it was front and back page news, which is what put it in my head to go and try and get some memorabilia. But there was a 2-page spread on it. And I bought the newspaper, and a friend of mine used a chat GPT or something to translate it. And yeah, it was basically saying that they were completely terrible, that they had no nous, no ideas, and that it was a humiliation for Croatian football. And yeah, they referenced us being in a relegation battle in our own league, which I thought was interesting. And they referenced that we are part time, even though obviously we aren't. And yeah, it was they referred to us as mechanics, but with mechanics with the aforementioned large huevos grande, that we had large testicles, um, and that was enough to beat a very. Oh yeah, they said that the Rijeka players shave their legs, while footballers shave their legs. The mechanics big balls was enough to win the day. So yeah, some
Wonderful.
interesting poetic license being used by the journos of Rijeka and Croatia more broadly, but it definitely seen as an absolute black eye. And now, sort of in tandem with this previous black eye that they would have gotten, by getting knocked out 5-0 away from home, this seeming sort of constant stumbling block of not being able to get good results away from home in Europe. This is the stick that they're using to beat the manager with, and genuinely, he seems to be coming under a lot of pressure.
Right, Donny. Loads of questions. Paul Byrne, given the wonderful performance and results, and the second leg in Tolka Park is a sellout, is the club in discussions with any terrestrial TV companies? My answer, or my knowledge of that, is no. I think RTE have said no. They're too busy. They're have their horse show on at the moment. So Fair
I
enough.
think I think it's genuinely. I saw that there's Scotland's Finest Homes or some show like this is being broadcast at the time on
I love that
RT.
show. Yeah, yeah, great. There you go. Okay, I think, yeah, we won't dwell on that one. And Paul again, due to the recent excellent performances and the heightened anticipation, is there any news about the reopening of the Drumcondra stand, which is the AKA the new stand? No, I think, Donny, we that was covered by Neil Doyle. That it will be open early next year. I think so. I believe that's the situation, Paul.
Yeah, we're certainly, as far as I'm aware, and I will always, I must always remember if I'm going to speak with authority or on something, I will try and caveat it beforehand with, as far as I know, or as far as I'm aware, certainly the plan is to have it open for the start of next season. I think things are going well in that direction. Um, a birdie did tell me a while back now, this isn't very recent, but that there was a slim chance of possibly having a sort of a soft launch before the end of the season. Um, but I think that's maybe more aspirational. But yeah, it looks like it's on the way. And look, it's fantastic, Andy, having obviously this game in Europe coming up on Tuesday, which could be so historic. Um, could be a turning point in modern times for the club, in so many ways. That's a sellout. We have a league game as we at time of recording tomorrow on Saturday against Bows, which is obviously huge as well. That's a sellout. So getting facilities that are up to par, up to snuff with what we want to be able to provide people, getting more bums on seats, giving people better match day experiences insofar as we can. This is vitally important, and to have it while the club is, as John Brennan rightly said, and Paul said there as well, the club is doing so well in the men's and the women's side. This is a really, halcyon time in the club's history. That having as many people in the ground and having the facilities in the ground as good as we can make them, is really important.
Just out of interest, Tony, and this is a genuine question. What was the experience in the cage like, view wise? Was it a bit not something you'd warm to week after week, or was there any sort of validity to their reasoning behind it?
Uh, I have to say, and look, we all probably have to accept at this point that if we've come this far into our supporting of Shelburne, we are slightly deranged in our own unique way.
Absolutely.
So that when much of us, when we saw the cage, instead of being, turned off, like a lot of the people who I would have forwarded the pictures onto, and who were aghast at seeing such, medieval infrastructure, the Shells fans that I know were like, "Oh my god, get me there! I want to be there now. Why haven't I there at this moment? Can I go there every week?" So actually, in the cage, the facilities were better than the majority of League of Ireland grounds, and I'm not doing a bit. That is genuine. They had a bar slash shop down below that was open from the second we arrived until, like, I'd say 40 minutes after the match had finished. We were still there, and the bar was still serving beer to people. So you could buy hot dogs, water, Fanta, and beer, I think, from this hatch. Now, everything in Rijeka, I won't speak to Croatia more broadly, but everything in Rijeka moved at a snail's pace when it came to food and drink and so on. If you're going out for a meal, you can't be in a hurry. So everything took a long time. There was a lot of queuing, a lot of waiting around, but there was a service being provided. The toilets weren't great. There was 4 or 5 portaloos, and that was it for the 150 people or so. But actually being in the cage and the view, look, wasn't that obstructed. There was a net in some parts and an actual cage in others, but you know he without sin and all that. There are points in the riverside and in the main stand where there are big yokes blocking your view. So it's not like we're not used to that. So I didn't have any issues with the view. There was no. It was kind of almost like once they got you into the cage, it was you could do whatever you liked. There was people climbing the fence, not just in celebration, but like once our dander was up and we were ahead in the game, there was people who watched the rest of the match hanging off the fence, and no one came into the cage to tell them they couldn't do it. There were armed guards who just on the concourse behind us, where the shop and toilets were, who were armed to the teeth. They looked like the kind of sort of figurines, sort of action men I would have had when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Just bulging in every direction, covered in armor plates and firearms at their hips. You know what I mean? But they were all just having cigarettes and chatting. They didn't come into the cage at all. They were just out there mainly to protect us, I think, from the Armada, which is what the Ultras slash, I think there's a sort of a heavy enough crew within that who like a bit of a rook. So they were looking out for us as much as anything. And there was a liaison officer who worked with John Brennan who got us to and from the game safely. So I mean, it's not to be sniffed at either. The issue really, Andy, as insofar as like a fan experience, that the only bit that wasn't great was it was a long time getting into the ground. The search was, look, I've been in team sports for most of my life, and I'm not just too squeamish when it comes to bodily contact. But like these people were frisking,
Anders Frisk.
they were frisking to a point where they were almost doing a medical exam. There was people who had lighters taken off them, stickers taken off them. Every single flag was unfurled, and not just to see if there was contraband within, but the flags were all being read to see if there was any messages on them that were deemed unacceptable. And all of this, even though there was only 150 or so fans in the cage, it took us a long time to get into the ground because of this sort of the stops and checks and everything. So that wasn't great. But actually being in there was, as you can see in that video that we referenced earlier, it was actually great crack once you were in there. So again, part of the experience, something you won't forget. And lest I do forget, I did want to fit this in, because among the 150 Reds that were in the cage, there were some new Reds at their first ever game. Six Germans who,
wow,
who had ran into some Shelbourne fans the previous evening in Trieste in Italy. There was a lot of people coming from various points, and some had flown to Trieste the previous night, stayed in Trieste, and then got a bus to Rijeka on the morning of the game. And over some beers the previous night, they had explained to these Germans why they were over and what their plan was. And these guys, I think, were just driving around having a sort of a mate's holiday in the German off season. And I guess I think the instigator in chief was a certain Jamie Kelly, and he said, "Yeah, you guys should absolutely come." They're like, "Are tickets available?" He's like, "Yes, there are. Yes, there are. Here's the link. You can buy tickets." He ran into them the next morning, and I was expecting to hear a story of like, "Oh well, they sobered up and they thought better of it," and they were like, "Oh, no, we're on our way to the shop to buy red T-shirts right now to go to the game." So they all bought these like Subudio style, white trim red T-shirts, kind of like old Manchester United jerseys. They all wore them, and I think one of them travelled in the boot of a car, because I think there was 5 of them in the car and one in the boot. That's the story I'm going to put forward anyway, that someone travelled in the boot, and they showed up and had an absolutely amazing time. They were singing all the songs. I think the lads had taught them the songs the night before, so they had the full repertoire, and they all lumped money on shells to win.
Wow.
So they were absolutely quids in as well, because obviously the odds were very, very wide. So they've since been in touch. I think they've ordered some gear from the club, and they're planning their next holiday as a group is going to be to Dublin, and they're going to come to Tolka Park and take a game in. So the lucky Germans were smiling on us on the night, and yeah, it was just another one of those wrinkles in an evening full of like, mad things that sort of got weaved together into the tapestry of a a very, very memorable experience.
Wow. What a story. Four-sprung Dirk technique. Donny, there you go. Wunderbar. And Jamie Kelly, if you listen to this, send this to the boys in Deutschland. What a story. Tony, we've been chatting away now. Before we wrap up and move on to domestic matters, one or two final questions. John Twamley. John, thanks for your message. John says, a great result in Rijeka, but as the manager said, it's only half time and the tie is finally balanced. Given how well we played on the front foot, how will we set up on Tuesday? Now, we won't go through everyone here, Donny, but is it sort of same as last week, or would you expect Joey? Joey always says he hasn't got a plan B, which I somehow wouldn't quite believe him, because he's doing a good job so far. But any major changes? Maybe Ali Coote coming in. Is there? If I can just add, Donny, looking at our bench the other night, that was another full 11 of first team starters. So it's a hell of a place to be in, strength wise.
Yeah, we haven't looked stronger really, I think, as a squad. I don't think that's up for debate. Obviously, we don't know the extent of Boyd's injury, but we could probably assume he won't be able to play. So immediately you've got one change there. Meepo didn't get, speaking of change, he didn't get much change out of their defence on the night. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a team where effectively I'd say the 11 could look like the 10 of the same, and Martin instead of Boyd, and try and to stifle them when we don't have it. And maybe Meepo, who let's not forget, okay, he didn't have his greatest night the other night, but has been in pretty good form prior to that, and was showing well. And I thought, like up in Windsor Park, I thought he was absolutely exceptional. So that wasn't that long ago. I think he'll probably go with something approaching that. The changes might be different. I think that's where maybe you might see a bit more variety. I think you'd see the likes of Ali Coote and so on come in. And look, this is all, he might have a plan like that where we stand. There's a very, very challenging 90 minutes coming from Bohemians in a match that has a lot of import on what's going to happen in the league. So hopefully load management and so on can be dealt with, and we don't have any significant injuries. But I think it'll look, if possible, similar to the 11 that took the field on Wednesday last.
One final question, Donny. How much credit does Joey O'Brien get for the recent bounce? Is he the key man behind this?
I believe so. I think it's pretty black and white. To put it in context, I thought he was very good. Again, look, when you're saying positive things about Joey O'Brien, this isn't a binary situation where praising him, no more so than with the goalkeepers or any player. When you're praising someone for a good job, it doesn't mean that you're denigrating the person who was in there before. But when he was asked if this was the result of his career, as a manager, he's like, well, I've had 8 games, I think he said. So yeah, and in that 8 games, look what we've managed to do. I saw that Red Stats had said that this was only our 4th ever away win in Europe. So I did a little bit of digging there and found that we'd first played away in European competition in 1962 against a club called Sporting Portugal. And it wasn't until the year 2000 that we actually won an away game in Europe against the very amazing Macedonian named team, the Sloga Yuga Magnet. That
Mm.
was
Yes. Yes.
Richie Baker free kick. Then it was 5 years later, away to Glentoran at the Oval, which we did a lot of referencing when we were talking about our trip up to Linfield. And then the following year, and prior to Wednesday, the last away win was in the Intertoto Cup in 2006 against Vetra of Vilnius. So, like, these are few and far between. We've had 4 away wins in Europe and only 3 off the island, actually on the continent, including Wednesday, in 63 years. So we've been playing away games in Europe for 63 years. We've won 4 matches, and Joey O'Brien has managed to win one of those 4. And the most unlikely, as I said, 100-1 odds when we went 1-0 down to win that game, and look pretty good doing it. So I think the atmosphere around the squad seems less tense. It seems like super focused, but happy. I think he radiates like no nonsense, but like he smiles all the time. And I kind of feel like we had gone to a point where everything felt a little on edge. Everything had felt a little testy, a little frayed. And then he's come in and, with the same group of players, largely now he's ameliorated the squad to a point where we're looking even better again, thank God, and made some signings that frankly I didn't think we had any right to expect. But it's the kind of attitude of like, we're enjoying our work now, I think, more than before. And the little tweaks here and there, as I said, square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes. I think in the short turnover, considering that we all kind of felt that the sky was falling in a bit when Damien Duff left, is nothing short of remarkable. And I hope for him and the players and the club as a whole that we can get something tangible out of this year, more than just memories, but group stages, and hopefully qualify for Europe for next year. We'll see what happens in the Cup. I really hope we have something tangible to show for what has been an absolutely amazing turnaround that Joey O'Brien has instigated.
Well, let's hope that next Tuesday in Tolka will be one of the biggest nights in this club's history. Across our potential opponents, Pauk, Wolfsberger, 0-0. Everything across the board is very, very tightly balanced. And if you're going, Dunny and I, of course, will be there. What an amazing evening it should be. No matter how it goes, every single red, get behind the team. And we don't see it. We don't want to see anyone leaving early this time, Dunny. That's for sure. This could be one of the biggest nights we have. So, any final thoughts on Europe before we talk all matters domestic?
I don't think so. I think we spent an hour talking about the same game. Yeah. Just what I would say, I suppose, something again that won't have come across, I think, in the content that I've seen since we saw the content that was coming out of the Balgriffin Inn that looked absolutely spectacular. It reminded me of the shots from Tolka Park on the last night of the season last year. Almost getting FOMO despite having actually been at the game, sort of reverse FOMO. But at full time, and I know Neil Doyle spoke to me afterwards, and in the same way that I heard Sam Bone give an interview saying that Paddy Barrett was chastising people for smiling after the game because the job is only half done, and half done is not done at all. Neil Doyle gave me a dressing down for smiling at him after the game as well. I still smiled, but there were a lot of tears. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of semi-naked men, and there was a lot of crying, a lot of hugging, but like crying with sort of laughter as well. Like people were incredulous almost as to that we've actually managed to pull that off. I saw 3 people in particular. I was hugging everybody, obviously, but I had this sort of, I've written it down here in my notes about bus connections, and what I mean by that: Tosh Moore, Shane Dawson, and Gav Doherty. Sort of 3 generations of people who've run buses since I've been going to matches, and 3 different guys who were there in the cage behind the goal who have done thankless work in getting sometimes just the literal handful of people who are interested in going to matches. Um, since I've been following the club, all three of them there, sort of almost awestruck by the moment. These are the people who would have helped me get to Cove away, to Drom. Shane Dawson is still on my phone as Shane Shuttle when he was running 16 seaters to Longford and Athlone and whatnot. And then of course he went on to be on the South Tolka Park steering group with myself, and as you know, played a huge role in helping to, I think, ultimately save the club from disaster. So seeing those guys there and having moments like, there's people who went on that trip who will never forget the kind of connection and the moments that they had, be it in the cage or just in the town of Rijeka before and after the game. It was really, really special, and I feel, as I said at the start, Andy, just privileged that I was able to be present and to enjoy the moment.
Those of us who've been around long enough, Tony, we don't get medals or bonus points for living through the dark days, but I think it does give us, as you said, a real appreciation for these magic moments. So well done to everyone who made the trip to Rijeka, and let's hope for an incredible night. Tolka, come 10 p.m. on maybe Tuesday night, we'll lift the place off the ground. So enjoy. So we'll move on. Just want to thank, as always, everyone for listening, and get in touch. Any questions, our messaging devices, our platforms are always open, especially now there's so much going on, and we'd love to hear from you. Donny, there was some sad news recently. The Connor Hart, a good friend of the show, good Reds man, very much involved in the Save Tolka Park. Connor's lovely mother Geraldine passed away recently, and we'd like to extend our sincere condolences to all the Hart family. How you know Connor from his time with the Save Tolka Park campaign, Donny?
Yeah, I met Harty, back in the first division days, in the newsstand, and like I just mentioned there, Andy, about the Shane Shuttle and bringing less than 20 people to multiple away games. Harty would have been one of those on the buses going to all these matches, and he's been involved in BD since the start. He would have helped get signatures for the Save Tolka Park campaign, doing stalls outside Tesco's in Drumcondra when we were looking to petition the city council. So Harty's is a really good guy, a lovely fella. Is totally, his life is totally meshed with Shell's, and I got a text today saying that his mother had passed away. The details are available on rip.ie, and it's just very, very sad news. It's never, the passing of any parent is always a real significant moment in a person's life, and just I'd like him to know that we're thinking of him, and and hopefully he can get some comfort from the Shelburne community that no doubt will be surrounding him at this difficult time.
Well said, Donny, and best wishes to Connor and all the Hart family at this very difficult time. So I think we've covered enough of the men's side. Now, we did mention, Donny, and so far we mentioned the great win away to Sligo last weekend. We got the Big Bows game tomorrow as we record. On Wearen side and the women's side have quietly gone back to the top of the women's table. Partly the fact that Athlone had played their game in hand the week before due to their European adventures. That game away to to Cork last week in Turner's Cross may not have been a classic, 2-0 win. Owen getting things sort of back on track after that disappointing All-Ireland semi-final. Again, this week now, Donny, their schedule has been sort of mixed around. This Sunday, 2 p.m. in Tolka, Shells take on Waterford. There's no room for mistakes at this point, Donny.
There isn't, and I don't. It's an unfortunate sort of side effect, I suppose, of the one club ethos that we have, is that you share your home pitch, and ultimately, if either side we're playing home games in Europe, this has knock-on implications and effects on when the stadium is available to be used and so on. So it's unfortunate that the women's games have had to been moved from their usual slot on a Saturday. I hope it doesn't disrupt them too much, and hopefully disruptions are kept to a minimum, as obviously they're pushing for a title. That's hugely important. But yeah, about the game in Cork, I was travelling to Sligo while that was on, and we had it on the app while we were on the bus to the game. It was kind of a sticky, a bit of an ugly game. Not one for the purists. I don't think. Not a game you'd be watching back with any urgency. But I think it was important after the sort of disappointment of the semi-final loss on penalties to Bows in the All-Ireland Cup the previous game, that a win by any means. And obviously, as you said, as we're pushing towards the end of the season, and having seen Athlone recently stumble for the first time all season, that it's important that you can't let any complacency occur, and you can't let any of these opportunities slip. And they didn't. The late penalty by Eoin Clancy putting it to bed. So yeah, it puts a bit of, it's kind of a stalemate, I suppose, until we play Athlone. Or maybe a case of who blinks first. They have a chance to go top on Saturday, and then tilt the pressure back on us. We've beaten Waterford each time we've played them so far this season. They can be hot or cold. I was down there, as we've spoken about previously, on the opening night or the opening day, and even then they were stubborn. You have to make them go away. We're obviously going to have to make teams respect us now without Kate Mooney. It's it's a devastating blow to lose someone of that caliber, and someone of that caliber who is in that form. There's no equivalent on the men's side across our three strikers. Have all had sort of periods of being in good form, being out of form, scoring or not scoring. Like, no one has hit the sort of strides that Kate Mooney was in. So she was really cruelly struck down at her peak this season. There's just no getting away from that. Hopefully the girls can rally around to sort of, to do it for her as much as anyone else, because God knows she will have deserved a winner's medal at the end of the season. But it's got to be fought for. It won't be given or handed to us. So you'd hope, perhaps, maybe I'm being a bit naive, but with the sort of fervour that Athlone had around the two Champions League games, full houses down in Lissywallen for the first time ever, and big wins, and fair play to them. Are they, can you take your eye off the ball, or have they invested a lot of energy in doing that? And then when the Lord Mayor's show is over and you've got to go back to the mundanities of league life, and the crowd is now down to, a couple of hundred people, can you get up for it again? That's the challenge that they'll face. We'll see. I hope, obviously, on Sunday in Tolka, we can do our business and keep tipping away until ultimately we face one another.
I wonder, Athlone travel to Bohemians on Saturday. I wonder if Bowes will have another set of T-shirts ready, just in case they manage to beat Athlone. Question here again from Paul Byrne. Probably mentioned Paul earlier. Paul is sent one in on the sort of more women's related. Due to the rescheduling of the European fixtures, the women's game against Shamrock Rovers is on next Friday, Dunny, which I know you'll be there as part of the commentary team. Paul says it will be interesting to see how the size of the crowd compares to a regular Saturday afternoon fixture. Now, with you being there on the mic, Tony, that could pull in a few extra punters. But would is there, it's busy time overall, but it would be good to see a big sort of Friday night cup match against Shamrock Rovers under lights in Tolka.
It's a curious one, isn't it? Because I'll be otherwise engaged. I'll be making my lead commentary debut on the night, so I'm looking forward to it. It will. It won't be new, obviously, for me to be at a game at 7:45 on a Friday in Talca. But yeah, obviously, with so many so many alterations to the usual fixture regime, the usual schedule, it's hard to know. Like, we do get a crossover, obviously, and I think it's something that we will have to continue to work on, getting more season ticket holders who go primarily to the men's game to show up and come to the women's matches. But we also do get a group of fans who come to the women's games because the atmosphere and the vibe is different, and because frankly the time is different. And there's a lot of, like, even friends of mine who'd bring young children in buggies, and they know that you can go behind the goal and kind of, for want of a better term, let them off the leash, and it's a very family friendly, suitable environment. Do you lose some of them when you have a game at 7:45? I know it'll still be bright and it is the summer, but I think there's certainly, any kids in prams probably won't be showing up at 7:45 on a Friday. So there's that kind of element of, do we gain more or do we maybe risk losing a few? Look, ultimately the game has to happen, and that was the time that we fell upon. I'd like to think the fact that 7:45 Friday night, Tolka Park, this is sort of tattooed into your grey matter of your brain as a Shells fan, going for any length of time. So take your season ticket, go ahead. It's a tasty game as well. Us against Shamrock Rovers in the quarterfinal of the Cup. It's all Rovers have to play for during the season. They've got Stephanie Zambra as new interim manager. She's trying to presumably hang on to that role in a permanent capacity going forward. There's a lot of narratives there, obviously, at play. It's a Dublin derby. I think it's a very compelling fixture. I think it's going to be a very competitive and compelling game. I do hope that people will not be put off by the kind of this nebulous nature of games on Tuesdays, games on Saturdays, games on Sundays, games still on Fridays. There's, it seems like there's, it's easier to find the days of the week with games on than without games on at this point. So yeah, I suppose all we can do here and on our platform, Andy, is to say that, as I said, I think it's going to be a very compelling and it's a very important game for us as well. Obviously, we want to go and try and win the league, but there's a very good Athlone Town team trying to do the same. We are defending champions of the FAI Cup ourselves in our own right, and we shouldn't be giving that up without a very good fight. So we absolutely could do with every single Reds body through the turnstiles that we can get on Friday night.
Okay, thank you, Donny. I think we just have to wait and see how all these games pan out. So Saturday, Tolka, Shells Bows. Sunday, Shells Waterford. Tuesday, the big one, and then next Friday we have the cup game, Shamrock Rovers against the women. So, as you said, Donny, this is coming out of small angles, but it's a great momentum in the club at the moment, and it's a great time to be here. So, Donny, that was episode 30 of Here to See the Shelbourne. Donny, you deserve a long rest now, and all your travels, and to all the Reds fans who did make the journey to Rijeka, well done. You represented the club with aplomb. So until next week, enjoy the games, folks, and we shall speak to you then.